Morning, Brother Steve, Brother Terry. Good to have you with us. Oh, and Brother Chad, our speaker is here. That's good. Overdressed, but that's okay. You're muted, sir. Oh, no. You can stay dressed up.
You never quite know how you're supposed to dress.
No. See, that's why I tell speakers to attend 1 or 2 meetings and get the feel for the room, and that way they can back out.
But you never know.
We generally don't. I wear a collared shirt, and I don't ask anybody to wear much. As long as you wear something.
You can never
you've got something. And I think that Steve and Terry Pringle will tell you that you're lucky you got something. So
that's right.
Very impressive how to tie up full tie, not a clip on.
Yes, there's a. I had a clip on when I was, a kid, and I just always thought bow ties were really cool.
Yeah,
but I never had one, and I never had one like the tie. And
Tracy Williams, that would be Belpre Lodge.
Morning, Terry. If you want to say hello to us.
I love that. Actually, you had a clip on, then you grew up. Basically, is what you're saying.
Well, I wouldn't know that. I would have to check.
All right, I'm going to mute Terry until he's ready to talk to us.
Terry is the district advisor in my district, and I'm sure he's doing some work.
Oh yes, so. I'm not being critical at all.
Oh gosh, no.
So we're fine. So let's see. Oh, not even up to 10 o'clock yet. Well, Chad, as you may recall, I start 15 minutes early, give everybody a chance to come in, get settled, and sort of waste time talking about things and saying hello. And then at 10 o'clock, I say hi to everybody, and then I'll introduce the speaker, depending on what's going on, if we have any kind of conversation. Sometimes I go right to the speaker because I can't think of anything funny to say. So it's like, all right, let's go to the speaker.
Well, there's always weird stuff going on. You know that.
I know. Well, I try to have like questions and stuff to ask people when I'm prepared for this. But that's the fun of this, is I totally make it up as I go along. There's no real script. There's no real structure. I'm still kind of fumbling my way through it. So,
Yeah, but the best part is, though, that I don't know. This is one of the fun parts of Masonry for me, is being able to attend things virtually has been really nice.
Absolutely.
I've been able to attend lodges. I was just at a lodge in South Africa this week.
Wow.
Brother Joe Martinez speak, and
cool.
I'm sitting here doing my homework, my work for work, but instead of having YouTube up or Spotify or anything, I got a lodge in South Africa, and it was a really great conversation, and a really great presentation.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So,
and let's see, Dave has just joined us. Dave, you want to say hello?
Greetings. How are we doing?
Good to have you with us. And whereabouts in Ohio are you from?
I'm in the Cincinnati area.
Oh, cool. All right. Nice of you to join us.
Thank you for inviting. Yeah.
Yep. And Terry and Tom and Steve, if you want to unmute and say hello. Terry unmuted, but he just didn't talk to us. Good to have you with us, Terry.
Well, it's good to be with you. And I'm in the southeast corner of Ohio, right along the Ohio River, not too far from Chad Kopenski.
Oh, okay. Good to have you with us. Steve, you want to say hello? Tom? Brian, I'm surprised none of our other regulars are here. Oh, no mic. Okay, well, Steve is with us. Tom, you want to say hello? I didn't know if John Hughes was going to join us today, Brian. He messaged me yesterday. Since he is a regular, I will say what he sent me. He received the Order of the Silver Trowel or degree of Thrice Illustrious Master in the Order of Select and Royal Masters last Monday, which is very cool. I know a tiny bit about that, not a lot.
Sounds very fancy.
Yes.
Hello, I'm sorry, I was carrying a cup of coffee back from the kitchen.
Quite all right. Where are you hailing from, Tom?
I'm from Northridge, California.
Oh, good.
I'm in the San Fernando Valley.
Ah, nice and early. That's 7 in the morning out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
you
did
make
get
it
to
up.
sleep till about 4:30, quarter to 5. So I'm just
Oh man.
Where in California are you, Tom?
Northridge.
Okay.
It's down in the San Fernando Valley. And it's where we had that big earthquake about 20 years ago or something. And it's sort of out by Burbank. What else is out here? Woodland Hills. The downtown areas. It's not that far, but it's about an hour drive with traffic. It's
Right. I got to tell you, I've lived through tornadoes and, hurricanes. Earthquakes freak me out.
yeah.
I never lived through one, but, in those other places, you can go someplace that's relatively sheltered.
Yeah.
Where do you go in an earthquake? Everything's moving.
Not
So
many
building this
places.
earthquake proof, if there is
Yeah.
one.
Helicopters, and plus they're unpredictable. At least with hurricanes or tornadoes, you might have hurricanes, you have warning. Tornadoes, they're in the area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right. You just sort of know that it's tornado season, so they're coming. So
Yeah.
Hello, Prince. Good to have you join us. Where are you hailing from? Prince is still primping. Where are you from, Prince? Can you hear me? Brother Botang, can you hear me? Oh, there he is.
Connecting to
what do you
audio.
know?
Okay.
Testing.
Hello. Hey, I hear Steve, I think.
Okay, great.
Alan. Let me get Alan. I'll say we have some semi-regulars here, and Jonathan, count Jonathan as a semi-regular. Of course, Brian's here all the time, my lovely co-host here. But most of our regular Canadian and British area are not here yet today.
You have got someone from, or you did have someone from, Eastern European country, Marion.
Oh,
Where
okay.
it's from, but he don't appear on the screen. He seems to have vanished.
Oh, okay. And I don't know what's up with Alan. I added him. I figured you would add him. And all right. Alan is in his truck, which is cool. Alan Clark is a truck driver, and he tunes in to us every time. In fact, he's messaged me on a Friday. It's like, what happened to the meeting? Like, well, it's Saturday, but I mean, today's Friday and tomorrow is the meeting. But other than that, you're on time. But he always tunes in while he's driving, so that's kind of cool.
We used to do something in Ohio called the Traveling Masonic Education Roadshow, and during COVID,
cool.
it went virtual.
Yeah.
And it was, presentations along a theme. We would do it regularly, and we would have guys who would log on in the truck,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of traffic, and it was an odd experience, truthfully, because
Yeah.
you're like, you're driving, dude. But he's
You
like,
should be driving. You don't be. Yeah, don't be looking at the camera. I mean, you can listen, but don't pay close attention.
they were fine. So it was kind of fun to have them there. So.
Oh, Michael Bailey is back. Good to have you with us, our return visitor.
Good morning, gentlemen.
How are you today?
Doing great.
Oh, Prince, there you are. Hello. Finally get connected there. Oh, now you're muted.
Morning, Brother Chris.
And morning, Kurt. I was getting around to you. I was. Good to have you with us. And Kurt said he is now actually working on a paper, which is very encouraging. Very happy to hear that.
And it's for a video contest that they have for education here in Wisconsin. So we'll see how good it is.
Very cool.
Kurt, what lodge are you in Wisconsin?
What's that?
What lodge are you in Wisconsin?
The Milton Lodge 161.
Oregon 151, right here. So I know
No.
exactly where you're located.
Oh, wow.
And I know that competition you're in because, yeah,
Okay.
Jason Laramie won't let me enter it.
Why is that?
Because he says that I spend far too much of my time in Ohio and not Wisconsin.
Ah,
So
I see. So I have to ask, why is there a lodge called Oregon in Wisconsin?
do you want the long answer or the short answer?
I'll take the short answer.
Right on. Because Oregon is right next to Brooklyn, Wisconsin. And basically, there was a railroad that went right through, and people, as they were like creating towns along the railroad, were like, we need a name. Oregon sounds good. And Brooklyn sounds good because the guys are from Brooklyn, New York. And there really was,
Okay.
I mean, then in that county in Wisconsin, the names are like Middleton. Why? Because it was in the middle of the county. And Verona. Why? Because there are people there from Italy. And
Okay.
Stoughton. Why? Because there was a guy there named Stoughton. And I mean, it was really so. But I will say,
I'm always interested in names and where they come. Well, because like I'm from Washington State, so I'm familiar with Oregon State, and I figured it was unique to the area. That's why it's always fun to see something crop up some other
I
part of
lived
the
in
country.
Milwaukee for almost 20 years. And it's always strange to me because whenever I say Milwaukee, most people think Wisconsin, unless I'm on the West Coast, in which case they immediately go to Oregon State. I'm like,
Right.
no, not trees. Think Harley Davidson. And
Okay.
but Kurt, that's a great competition that they're doing. What they're doing is in Wisconsin, they don't have live education officers, and they're trying to really kind of cultivate new voices, and get content for the website and do some different things with education. And so the competition is to create a paper presentation and to video yourself presenting that in lodge, along with leading a conversation or a discussion in lodge just for a few minutes, and submitting that to their Grand Lodge Education Committee, just to, again, along with the written portion of it, so that the Education Committee gets content, but also so that they can discover and reward these new voices. I think it's a great idea.
That's wonderful. Anything we can do to encourage Masons to write papers and do research. I wanted to say hi to Prince. Good to have you. Welcome. Where are you hailing from?
Hi. I'm Prince from Ghana, West Africa.
Oh, very good.
And I'm glad to be here.
What lodge do you belong to?
Come again?
What lodge do you belong to? Are you a Mason?
No, I'm not Mason, but I'll be very, very excited to join the Mason.
Oh, okay.
I have studied. I started studying something about Mason about 6 years ago, and
Okay.
I'm about to initiate right now.
Okay.
I have 2 or 3 months to initiate.
It's okay. We do not have a requirement. You do not have to be a Mason to attend, so it's all right. I just ask. I welcome people who, if you're interested in being a Mason, by all means, you're certainly welcome here. So don't feel out of place. So please enjoy. And that's something I'll say as for everybody. We have people who come to the group all the time and say they want to be a Mason. They want to be a Mason. It's like, well, we're kind of like it in the major leagues here already with the research, but. And they ask me questions and I try and be nice and answer because I want to give people a chance. But you don't have to be a Mason to be on our Facebook group or to join our Zoom meetings. And if we can point you in the right direction, we're happy to do that.
Well, Prince has been initiated in a couple of months, aren't you?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Chris, can I speak?
Please. Go ahead.
Okay. Can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. We have been friends about almost 2 years right now, isn't it? And you have been keeping sending me messages about Mason. I'm very excited about that.
You said I've been sending you messages? Or who?
Yes.
Has? Really? Okay, hold on.
You said?
Okay. Are you, well, maybe you're under a different name on Facebook.
Yeah, because first, I'm a journalist. I'm an investigative journalist in Ghana here. And sometimes you have to hide your identity for one or two things.
If you want to, can you either tell me or message me your Facebook name so I can just see who I'm talking to? Make sure.
My Facebook account name is Ohineba Kokwata. Can I spell Ohineba? And it's a local name. Ohineba means prince.
Yes. Okay, Ata Pasor. Yes. Yeah, you messaged me yesterday. You're gonna go. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, yes, I was just looking. We have a long conversation. Okay, good. Well, good to see you in person then.
Sure.
Your name threw me. I was like, I don't know anybody named Prince Boateng, but okay.
Sorry for that.
That's quite all right. Oh, and since I'm checking messages, Brother Graham is not going to join us today, our Australian brother. Yes, good to have you with us then. Well, let's call you Prince because that's what's written there. So I'm just, we've had a lengthy conversation over the years. I have a lot of people that I talk to on Facebook and they send me stuff and I talk to them at length and then I don't see them again. And then they pop up somewhere and I start talking like I just met them. And then it's like, well, what about this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I go look at messages like, oh, we've been talking for over a year now. Okay, my bad. I don't know. I got 3,000 friends on Facebook. I don't have you all memorized. I'm sorry. But I go back and reread the message stream and I go, oh, yeah, we were talking about this or something. So I do reacquaint myself. But that's what's kind of fun about social media. You meet people and then you drift away for a bit and then you talk to them again somewhere and it's all pretty cool. So good to have you with us then. Did I get to say hi to everybody? Steve's on. Alan, good to have you with us.
Good morning.
And I think we said hi to everybody. We're after 10. Let me do my formal thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virginia Research Lodge's Unstated Meeting. It's December 3rd, 2022. This is hosted by Virginia Research Lodge in Highland Springs, Virginia. My name is Chris Douglas. I am the junior warden and the webmaster for Virginia Research Lodge. If you look at our chat, you see we have our Facebook group. If you're not already a member, please join. We put our research papers out there. The Research Lodge website has all of our research papers and other interesting things we have going on. And our YouTube channel has all of these unstated meetings get posted on YouTube in a reasonable amount of time. If you are watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And I do not have our last one up yet, but I will have that shortly. That was the most interesting talk on the 47th Problem of Euclid. Finally, my email address. So if you are on Facebook, message me to be added to our weekly email list. If not, you can email me and I'll add you to our list. So I want to welcome everyone for coming out today. Jonathan, you have a lovely library. I see you've been working on it. Jonathan is a short man. As you can see, the top 3 shelves of each bookshelf are not filled because he can't get that high. So I don't know, just want to call you out on that. I don't know why that is. You got a ladder there, but you don't fill the top shelves.
You're actually not too off from the mark. I'm not that tall, so.
Look, I'm not that tall, but look at my library here. I get all the way up to the top there. I put all those statues up there in the roundy part of the room. I'm not an architect. What do you call that? What do you call that? Brian, what do you call that? The round, when you have a big, is that observatory? When you have a
dome.
A what?
You mean the dome?
The dome? Well, no, but when you have a round room like that. Rotunda. That's it.
Yeah.
We'll go with rotunda. Yes, I went up there and placed all the statues myself from the rotunda there. So yeah. Now this is the Library of Alexandria. I had to compete with I think it was Brian Croteau, who had a picture of his actual library behind him. And so I had to do something to top him. So I found a picture of a artist's conception of the Library of Alexandria, and that became my background here. Of course, here, I'm getting good with the finger thing here. Here is, why is it I moved there? That's our Virginia Research Lodge's official logo, the thumbs up on the apron. I'm gonna have some shirts made at some point, some polos with that logo. So we'll be selling those in the lobby after our movies. But I'll let y'all know when you can get those. I have a lot of ideas on stuff we want to start selling. See if we can get some interested people buying stuff with our logo on it. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. We have a great speaker. He is going to introduce himself and give all of his bona fides. That way I don't get anything wrong. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't have any questions to ask anybody. So I'm going to go straight to our speaker now. Chad Kopenski, please take it away.
Sure. Hi, thank you for allowing me to be here. And I especially thank my friends from Ohio who are here. It's I appreciate the support. Thank you. Because, I'm nervous as I'll get out. My name is Chad Kopenski. I'm kind of a has-been, past district deputy, past DEO, past chairman of the Grand Ledge Education Committee, past master, past whatever. Currently, I'm president of the Midwest Conference on Masonic Education, but mostly right now, I'm just kind of sitting here in my lovely little burg in my little house in Appalachian, Ohio, and speaking to you. And it's an honor to be here. So I have a boatload of slides, if that's okay, if you will let me share my screen.
Yeah, I'm working on that right now.
Cool. I speak fairly quickly, so I just want to warn you all right off the bat that I speak quickly. This is also a fairly graphics heavy presentation, so this will go quickly. Are you all seeing a lovely screen with an image on it?
Yes.
Cool. All righty.
Yes.
Okay. This is called John Sherer, The Story of Fascination. Standard disclaimer, these thoughts and opinions are my own, and really, truthfully, as with all educational endeavors, my thoughts and opinions may change over time. This has been an ever-evolving presentation. There's some people on here who have seen this presentation in one form in the past. It just, by necessity, changes over time. Some people here have heard me speak, and I tend to speak a lot about the importance of Masonic connections. Masonry to me really is about connections. Guys join looking to connect. They stay because they found something meaningful to connect to, and they leave because those connections have been allowed to rust or wither away. Also, brethren who have heard me speak know that I tend to sometimes conversationally take the scenic route. I kind of go a long way out of my way going out so I can bring you back a short distance. So if you start to wonder if we're lost, don't worry. You're just on a shortcut that I know. I'll get you where you need to be. So this presentation is a story about fascination and its power and importance. And fascinate means to draw someone's attention irresistibly. It's different than obsession because a fascination has multiple areas of focus. And I like to think of it like studying the facets on a gem. You look at a gem from one way and you see certain colors. You turn it another way and you see a different brilliance. Different angles leads to different things. And the more you look, the more you find. And the more you look, the more you want to keep looking. So this is the story of my fascination. My home lodge is this place here, Ainsville 278. My home lodge is Pyramid 25. Sorry, this is Ainsville 278. It's my fun lodge. They're a rural lodge of about 50 people in a town of about 157. They usually get about 20 guys to a meeting, and they do some really good ritual work. I joined them because it's my best friend's lodge, and because I expressly wanted to belong to a lodge where I could sit in the back and throw spitballs. Your home lodge, you feel responsible. This was going to be that lodge where I could just sit back and do nothing. Well, that didn't last long. They knew that I could give the lectures, and so they asked me to give the EA lecture at their next inspection.
Hey,
and I agreed.
Chad,
and when I went
Chad,
yes.
Excuse me a sec. Can you tilt your camera down just a hair? Because as you talk, your half your face is dropping off camera. That's better.
No one wants to see my face. They want to see that image.
Well, we like both. That's perfect. The more you talk, the more
this is not the money maker.
Nose. So. Okay, that's all right. Look,
right on.
I'm the producer here. Just trust me. All right, go ahead.
That's absolutely fine. I will listen to you. So I agree. And when I went to practice, they went and they grabbed this book from under the secretary's desk. And it's a big book. It's like 3.5 feet long and about 2.5 feet wide. And when you opened it, it had pages that looked like this. They're engraved images. They're trestle boards for each of the 3 degrees. And I'd never seen images like this ever. The colors are vibrant and they're vivid, and the lines are incredibly defined. They're just beautiful. And if you've never given a lecture using a trestle board like this, I highly recommend it. You go at your own pace. It really helps in memorization, and it makes a much more incredibly personal presentation. I love it. Later on in that inspection season, I went to Trimble Lodge, which is like 15 minutes from Amesville, and they had this huge tapestry on their wall. Same symbols, same arrangement, same font. Looked down in the corner, and there's a name, John Sherer. And when I asked the guys in Trimble about the tapestry, they had no idea about it, like how or why it had ever come to lodge. It just always sort of had. And when I went back to Amesville and mentioned the connection, they thought it was interesting. And when I asked about our book, no one had any idea about how or why the lodge had it. They just always had. And then I made the two most dangerous sounds in Masonry. Followed by why. And the title of this book is Sherer's Masonic Book of Ancient Craft Masonry. You can read it there. The most useful link I could find in a Google search was from the William Reese auction site, which listed the book for $6,750 and mentions that the only other known copies of this book are the two in the Library of Congress. And I again uttered the two most dangerous sounds in Masonry, and why. And I called my buddy Chad Simpson at Grand Lodge and told him that Amesville had this book. And I got a very curious, they do? Which made everyone at the lodge nervous because, And studying that EA trestle board, I noticed that the image of King Solomon's temple on it looked a lot like a framed print that hung above the senior warden station. This one. And sure enough, Sherer's Masonic view of Solomon's temple dated 1868. And even in the back of that book, there's a version of that print without colors. And I've seen this print in many Ohio lodges, and always the same thing. Nobody knows how or why it came to their lodge. For Amesville, I did finally track it down. There's a basic lodge history. It says that Brother John Broadwell brought this print for the lodge in 1869 and presented it. For the other lodges, nothing. Again, back to the Google machine, and yielded nothing except this auction site selling a framed print like Amesville's for $4,500. So we have these expensive items in this little rural lodge. Why? Who is this guy, John Sherer? And so now I'm just fascinated. And I start with the Library of Congress because, that's what the auction site mentioned. And this is a lot of published work, but it's difficult to find a catalog or a complete list. And I gleaned that he was an engraver in Cincinnati. His first published work is this chart which diagrams English grammar from 1837. I'm a former English teacher, so that sends me down a rabbit hole for a full weekend. This thing is meant to teach immigrants the rules of the English grammar. It's weirdly useful as it is beautiful. And looking further, I see that Sherer moved to Masonic Odd Fellows and other fraternal work. After about 1880, nothing much is published. What he's known for are these fraternal carpets, like the one in Trimble, or this one in Eastern Star in Franklin, Ohio, or Woodsbury 280 in Woodbury, Kentucky. These were carpets containing the symbols for the 3 degrees that lodges could use. And the story that Sherer put out there was that he traveled all around to multiple lodges and multiple jurisdictions and collected these symbols that were in use. And he copied the symbols, put them into his carpet, making them this incredible resource to standardize and enhance their ritual work. And these are high quality items that could be bought for $20 or about $630 in today's money. And he also sold smaller versions of these carpets that served as a diploma for brethren that could carry with them as proof that they were Masons.
Excuse me, Chad.
Yeah.
The question Steve asked, are these carpets or wall hangings?
He called them carpets, even though, they technically are wall hangings. So he never refers to them as wall hangings or tapestries. He calls them carpets, but they weren't really meant to be walked on. Although he did have fellow craft carpets that he always referred to them as carpets. Okay. Again, all of these are available in the Library of Congress, which, is wonderful. They mentioned 3 books. They mention his Gems of Masonry from 1859, in which Sherer explains the symbols of the 3 Blue Lodge degrees and 4 the Yorkright degrees. And he refers to Preston and Anderson and Amon Razon and the Scriptures and the early work of Henry Parmalee. And all this is offered with commentary and poetry of Brother Rob Morris, who was serving as Grand Master of Kentucky at the time. The second is Sherer's Masonic Ladder from 1867. It's more developed and includes more capitular and cryptic masonry. And then the last is Sherer's Masonic Monitor from 1867, which is his first 2 books with a web monitor, adds information on chivalric masonry. And reading these books really is fascinating. It's a look at early masonry in America, referencing foundational documents. You start comparing what's kept, what's changed. It's a goldmine of information. And you start wondering, like, why these aren't in everyone's bookshelves, and why isn't John Sherer a household name? His stuff seems to be everywhere, but no one knows who he is. Why? I mean, surely he was a big deal, right? He must have had a huge impact on Masonry, except he doesn't appear in Grand Lodge proceedings for Ohio or anybody around us. The only mention is some guy by his name being suspended in 1861 and reinstated in 1864 from Yeatman Lodge. He is mentioned in one proceedings, Kentucky, the years that his buddy Rob Morris was serving as Grand Master. And what's funny is that during Rob Morris's years as Grand Master, he was selling his own version of the Webb Monitor. He was raising money for a trip to the Holy Land, and in many of Scherer's books is this essay about an engraving done about Morris's research on the attacks in the Holy Land. And lodges can buy this print to help fund Morris's trip to the Holy Land to confirm his suspicions. And Morris around us can be kind of controversial because he's sort of seen sometimes as kind of a self-promoter and kind of a huckster. Kentucky has no standardized ritual to this day. And Morris was kind of peddling his own ritual, saying that this is the one true ritual and you should use this. And what's funny is when you look at Morris's monitor, it was done by Sherer. In fact, Scherer's Masonic Monitor, 1867, is literally the exact same as Morris's from 1859. It's just Morris's name is scrubbed out of it. Morris's was dedicated to Joseph Draper. Sherer dedicates his to Albert Mackey. And so now I'm wondering what's going on here. Is Sherer also a huckster? There are catalogs for his work. And what's funny is that Sherer sold his work to the lodges on spec, COD. So a lodge could contact Scherer's offices, order the stuff they wanted, and it would be delivered to the lodge, and the lodge could just pay the guy who, like, so a lodge could just kind of, order what they wanted and figure it out later. So was everything a lie? I mean, did Sherer actually just promote himself as being widely accepted? And then, because this stuff was so good and so cheap, it actually became widely accepted? Is the reason why we see his stuff more in rural lodges because he pretty much duped them all? Like, what's going on? And so now, like I said, I'm fascinated. Is he a huckster or is he a visionary? And truthfully, I don't even know if he existed because his life and passing seems to have caused no ripples Masonically, despite what I think is, a pretty important body of work. His publishing house was sort of a murderer's row of engravers in Cincinnati, but those buildings, it's now a parking lot. And that murderer's row, the road that it was on, doesn't even exist anymore. Why? It's amazing what you can do sharing your fascination. A year and a half ago, I gave a presentation to the Ohio Lodge of Research. My buddy Dave Dougherty is somewhere in that picture. And one of the brethren in attendance, Donald Cruz, had written a book about Cincinnati Masons, never heard of Sherer. But he offered information. And another brother was an engraver, and he gave his thoughts about the entire process. And the video of that presentation is actually on the OLR website. But the next thing I know, my buddy Dave Dougherty connects me with Yeatman Lodge. And when I contact them and talk to them, they tell me that you can see their answer. Their records were all pretty much destroyed because a secretary left in his garage. Anything before 1979 is just gone. Don Cruz becomes fascinated. He wrote this book on Masons in Cincinnati, and he contacts me the next morning with some information. Census records that list Sherer and his family members, and an obituary that might have been his. This guy died in 1876, about the same time that Sherer stopped publishing, but the dates don't match up. The ages don't match up. Nothing here kind of matches up at all. I made an offhand comment to most worship brother Doug Kaler, a past Grand Master and a librarian, about my difficulties. And he mentioned that lodges used to report membership differently and that members had these cards that were at Grand Lodge. And if I contacted Grand Lodge, I could get this information. I did. And one email and 2 hours later, I have this Masonic record, except that the dates don't match up. The spelling doesn't match up, but it's the only one in all the records of Ohio that are even close to a John Sherer from Yeatman. And the more I talk about Sherer, the more connections I make. Brethren start sending me these pictures of carpets or books in their lodges. I'm able to look at the minute books and see what they paid and how the lodges got them. Still, no mention of Sherer visiting any of these lodges. 2021, I left our Grand Lodge communications early because I could, and I get a phone call from Kaler. Someone gave him a package of our communications, and it was a Sherer diploma, and did I want to come over and take a look at it? I told him I was about an hour away, but I turned back. He said, "Oh, I'll just send you some pictures." I can tell you, this thing is huge, and it's beautiful. If you look in the bottom right-hand corner, that's Doug Kaler's feet. And it was kind of funny because he said that if I had been there that day, he might have actually given me the diploma to take home as opposed to having to carry it back to the Grand Lodge Museum. And I think you just said that just to make me feel guilty about leaving communications early. But like I said, it's huge. It's in multiple languages. And again, the details of the color. My buddy Chad Simpson had something like this printed and given out at the Masonic Restoration Symposium years ago, but they're nowhere near as nice. And looking at these images, I start thinking about that book at Gainesville that started all of this. Right Worship Brother Dan Franco is a friend of mine, and he's moved to the area, and he's working to digitize the records of Ohio's American Union #1. And I asked if he wouldn't mind taking a picture of some of the images in Amesville's book, because by now, the guys in Amesville, I've been kind of sharing my research with them. This has become a point of pride, and they will show you this book, and brag about it. And if I try to take it out of the lodge, I may not make it, out of the parking lot if I would try to do that. So Dan came over and got some pictures. And my big question is that there's an image in the front of this book I'd never seen before anywhere. No artist, no title, no mention in the book's table of contents, nothing. Doug Kaler didn't know anything about it. He offered some thoughts, but he's like, I don't know what this is. So I contacted the William Reese auction house. And they were very grateful. And I sent the image of the picture. All they would say is that their copy of this book did not have that image. Okay, why? Through multiple grapevines, I heard about the Center for Fraternal Collections and Research at Indiana University. I contacted their director, Dr. Heather Calloway, through Facebook. I sent her some pictures, and I got her connected with Dan Franco. A few weeks later, she and I met over Teams, and it's always a strange thing when the librarian or the book expert is kind of hyperventilating on the call. She informed me that she'd reached out to her colleagues and that there were 2 copies of this book in the Library of Congress. Yep. 1 copy with William Reese. The Grand Lodge of Iowa had a copy, but it wasn't complete necessarily. There was a copy of the House in the Temple, but none of them had that image in the front of the book. And if she could please come to Amesville and please take a look at this book, we're going to arrange that. So,
hey, Chad, did you show the image you're talking about?
You need to be patient, Mr. Douglas.
Are you getting to it? Okay, sorry.
So
are you building up to showing it? Okay, I'm sorry.
I am.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Now, well, you're fine. But norm with Sherer, once you start solving one masonry or pull a thread, a few more show up. In preparing for this presentation yesterday, I started looking through some of the catalogs to see that, did I have a complete set of his work, because I figured that there would be questions. And in one catalog, because Sherer is actually really inconsistent, almost violently inconsistent with the names and descriptions he uses of his works in his catalogs. In one catalog, he has this. It's the name of Amesville's book, and he mentions right there in the first sentence, a frontispiece, Jerusalem as besieged by Titus. There it is. This is the image. This is the version. Remember we talked about Morris was selling an image to help finance his trip to the Holy Land? This is that image that they were selling. The essay that he wrote to go along with it describes the image but doesn't contain it. Now, here's, like I said, where more mysteries come up. Doing any kind of search on the title or this image yields nothing. There are many that are like it, but not this. There's nothing like this in the Library of Congress, nothing like this in the Center for Fraternal Research, or multiple library databases. This was not recognizable by sight to a score of Masonic experts. And I'll tell you, brethren, that, to my estimation, you were the first brethren outside of maybe a handful to view this image in a generation, more than a generation. It's not that remarkable, but somehow it's remarkable. Why? Again, this is the most dangerous sound in Masonry, I think. Why is this in Amesville? Why, if this is what Morris was selling, why can't I find it anywhere else? Why is it not in any of the other copies of the book? So yes, I'm fascinated. But where do you go from here, right? Remember I said that fascination is looking at something from different angles to understand, the beauty and the nuances. There's a power to fascination. There really is. It helps you understand something more deeply, and it enriches your experience. And when I go to a lodge now and I see a Sherer print, it's like seeing an old friend. When I see those images still in use, I know where they came from. And I know their story. And I can help the brethren in these lodges connect with this thing in their lodge they know nothing about. No one really should ever again look under the secretary's desk and be met with a resounding, I don't know. Masonry is all about connections. Guys join looking to connect. They stay because they found something meaningful to connect to. They leave when those meaningful connections are allowed to wither away. And my fascination with Sherer has allowed me to connect to brethren and with Masonry in ways I never thought possible. It's been my path into this rich world of Masonry beyond the pronunciation of words in our ritual or a list of famous Masons that always seems to end with like Roy Rogers and Red Skelton. This fascination, of course, always leads to more questions and more connections and more context, more beauty in more angles, more time spent in that dangerous land of why. Why isn't he more well known? Why are there no records of him that match? Why is there no evidence to back up any of his claims? Why do he and MC Lilly and the rest of Murderers Row all use the same images, and where did they come from? What happened between him and Rob Morris? Was he a visionary? Was he a huckster? Did he ride the wrong coattails? Was he a prophet in his own, forgotten his own country? Was he an artist who duped people? Like, why? Who is he? And in speaking to other, Kaler and other artists or other friends, they asked, what would be enough? When will I be satisfied? Would it be getting concrete answers to certain questions? Would it be a physical artifact? Would it be finding Scherer's grave, something from his family? What would it take? And truthfully, why does any of it matter? I mean, we have his work. It's still available. Dave Bacon still sells, copies of this. It's still available and still being used. I mean, what is the point of all this? I told you that Masonry is all about meaningful connections, seeking, forging, and maintaining them. And I also told you that this was a story about fascination, its power and importance. And I hope you recognize that satisfaction is never the point of fascination. And it was certainly not the point of this presentation. It was a story about fascination, about John Sherer. So, thank you, brethren.
Thank you, Chad. Can you leave the put your screen back up? I had a couple of questions. If you don't mind. First of all, you mentioned Kentucky and not requiring ritual. I can't speak for other jurisdictions, not having standardized ritual. Virginia has a committee on work and has since the beginning. And so they are very strict on enforcing the ritual. We have district instructors of work. We make sure that the lodges are consistent. We have schools every year. So it's interesting that Kentucky is like, you do what you want.
Ohio was really, during the quote unquote ritual wars of the 1800s, where everyone was peddling their own version of ritual.
Right.
It's Ohio was right in the middle of that. And so much of the development of us as a state, including how we're in districts, the development of our district deputies and DEOs, and even like the selection of our Grand Masters, in many cases comes down to the development of our ritual. And we finally got a standardized ritual. Oh, this is where I would ask David, but David probably will, throw it back to me. Late 1800s is when it was finally standardized, finally written down in early 1900s.
So you have like district instructors of work and
we used to, and then
you don't anymore.
No.
Interesting.
Because brethren can have their own written copy of the work, and in theory, we have district deputies who come, and every lodge is inspected in one of the degrees each year, and that rotates. And so they are inspected in both in their books and in the performance of the work. And so there is this ongoing, in theory, construction and correction in the work. But here's where also Ohio is both wonderful and problematic. And I will use Wisconsin as an example because I have sitting right in front of me where you can't see it, an Ohio ritual next to a Wisconsin ritual. Wisconsin, like many other jurisdictions, is of the mindset that where the ritual is silent, then they need to put something in there. And so Wisconsin has very specifically how you hold your stabs and where you hold them and what angle and how to do your turns and where guys should be. I mean, they have this great description of a position that you're supposed to be in as senior deacon when you're at the altar, to put the staff between your neck and the floor so you can open up the book and open up the great lights. And it describes it perfectly. Ohio's different. Ohio's mindset has kind of been where the ritual is silent, then the brethren can kind of interpret to create a lodge experience that is reflective of their values and of their experience. And
in Virginia, lodges spend money on staff stands, like flag stands, so you have something to put
see.
in.
And I think the same thing.
Can you? I'm sorry. Can you bring up the first, the Solomon's Temple? And there was a black and white version and then a color version.
From the back of the book? Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I wanted to say, I think Jonathan mentioned Monitor Lodge. I don't know if that was the exact image he was talking about. Yeah. Show the color one before that.
Now, here's the funny thing. In Amesville, this hangs with the senior warden station.
Right.
When you stand
that
out,
one,
you can't see the colors. When Dan brought it down, just because of the angle that you're at, when Dan brought it down and set it on the floor, he and I both looked at it and just our jaws dropped. Like, that's what that looks like.
In Norfolk at Granby Street Temple, which is one of the biggest temples in Virginia. At one time, we had 12 lodges that met there, 2 Royal Large chapters, a Commandery, Scottish Rite. We're slowly, lodges are closing or moving out of there, but it's still a beautiful building. But we have this on the first floor in the main lobby, in the main hall, and it's gorgeous.
Do you, did you know that history about it? Did you know where that came from and why?
I knew very little about it. And Steve told the group that he was raised in Virginia in 1855 or so. So I guess Steve's been around a long time. I think that's what Steve meant. He was talking about your ritual. In the chat, guys, it says, I was raised in Virginia and then 1855 or so. So apparently Steve has been a Mason for a very long time.
I've known Steve. I wouldn't doubt it. But it's in my little section of Ohio, this print appears in 2 lodges. And the other lodge has no idea what this is or where they got it from.
Hey,
or where they got
Jonathan, you mentioned Monitor Lodge. Is this the image that was in Monitor Lodge?
Well, no, not quite. The one that is in Monitor Lodge, but I've seen that one, by the way, at the Granby Temple. But the one Monitor Lodge is the other one that that show the different degrees and
okay.
My daughter's a rainbow and she goes and so I spend a lot of time at that
one. That one like that,
yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny that that you named this presentation the fascination, because I spent so many hours just staring at this, fascinated with all the symbols and everything. I can't believe that we're talking about it. So thank you.
Right. I give my home lodge in Wisconsin, who I've only actually sat in once. I've attended virtually. Like I got to reconnect with those guys over Zoom over COVID. And as I'm giving this presentation, they're like, that we have copies of those on the wall right behind us, right? Like, no, and they went to lodge and they took the camera. And
that's funny.
What's funny to me is they're actually not Sherer prints. They're from his competitor, MC Lilly, done around the same time.
I've seen Lily's work. I remember the name. I think I've seen
Lilly,
his stuff.
if any of you have those magic lantern slides, that's how most people know MC Lilly.
Yes, that's it. That's what we have in our lodge.
Right. Those images came from these carpets. Sherer never did the carpets because he was gone by then. So him going away meant
you mean the
could come
the
up.
slides?
Yeah, those magic lantern. Now, for a lot of those lodges around me, I'm taking those magic lantern slides and I'm putting them into PowerPoint presentations so they can be reused.
Yeah, that's
so
what
it's
we've
fun
done.
to study those images because they come from the carpets of this time.
The other thing I wanted you to go, can you show me, there was a print you showed early on that was the Fellowcraft. It was basically like a cutaway of 2 stories and had the Fellowcraft and had the steps on the first floor. If you can just roll backwards. Now keep going. Actually, yeah, go for it. Maybe that was it. You just went back.
This one here?
Well, now that one, yes. Okay, so you see, you have the guy at the, I guess that's the EA. Well, no, what is that? Well, I mean, the steps are going up. So is that supposed to be the first door on the left? What is that supposed to represent? Or is that the inner? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The inner and outer door. I got you. Now, Fellowcraft lecture. Inner and outer door, and then King Solomon's. Okay, the middle chamber. Got it.
Even on those, there are numbers on those that we don't use anymore in Ohio. Like it's
Right.
like 7 and 1 4, and 6 and 10.
Right.
And we know that's not part of. I think I have an image of that here.
Yeah.
Here you can see them 7, 1, and 6, 5, 2, and 3, and 3, and that's not part of our lecture anymore. And I've been told by the jurisdictions that they're the 7. I mean, those are our numbers for what you have to open up lodge, and that those are
really
numbers. Mm-hmm. You have to have a lodge of entered apprentice consists of 7, a lodge of Fellowcraft consists of 5, a lodge of consists of 3, which is symbolic but not constitutional. What I found out doing some research is that 2 and 3, at least 2 have to be Fellowcraft.
Right.
Of the 7, 1 has to be, I think 1 has to be a Master Mason. Actually, I shouldn't say that. 1 is to be Master Mason. So that's no longer part of our lectures.
In Virginia, it's 3, 5, and 7, but it's always 3 Master Masons.
We can do our work in Ohio in any degree.
Right.
And
well, no, I'm saying what specifically is stated.
Really?
Yes. That in referring to King Solomon, it's out of the Master Masons lecture.
Right.
That it was the 3. There was another Fellowcraft. I wanted to compare that first one you showed, and there was another one almost at the end of your presentation that showed 2 floors. But there's that one, and then there's people at the bottom. So very similar to that other one, but again, and then I guess it's showing the candidates advancing. So
correct.
It's as if you're stopping in time. So there's the candidate when he starts, and then he's moving up the stairs, and then he's going through the doors and all that. Okay.
And Ainsworth never uses this because we have one of those carpets you roll out on the floor, and we
yes,
that. But yeah, I mean, originally they might use something like this, which is
I would ask. Let me ask a quick question to the group. All right, thank you. Anybody else have a question that involves the slides before I have them?
I can always just
bring it back up.
So
I wanted to ask the group, just because I'm curious, how many of you here have conferred the senior deacon's lecture in the Fellowcraft degree? You and me, Steve. Okay, I'd be curious to find. Yeah. Oh, and Dave. Okay. I have done the degree. It's the first lecture I learned. I learned it because a friend of mine was a DMLA and he joined my lodge. So I learned, that was the first lecture I learned to give it to him when he was passed. I have done it with both the carpets and without the carpets. Which is your preference if you have a choice to use the carpets or not? If you have the carpets available. So.
If you're asking me, I will tell you that in my jurisdiction, we have the DVD, like that's, the Grand Lodge put out a long time ago. And it's fun for me because there are some friends of mine who are in that DVD and it's nice to see them, but it has a very specific tempo that's not mine. And
okay.
I like this book because what I do is I actually sit the brother across from me. So I face him and the book is kind of off to our side and I talk to the brother. Just kind of,
but in the senior deacon's lecture, don't you actually escort him physically around the floor?
For the fellowcraft, we
Yes,
do, but
that's what
I can-
I'm talking specifically about
Okay.
that. Whether walking on the carpets that have the 3, 5, and 7 steps, as opposed to just walking them yourself.
Gotcha.
Dave, what's your take? Do you prefer the carpets or?
Again, I'm obviously in the same jurisdiction as Chad, so I learned them by the DVDs, and contrary to what Chad just mentioned, I actually love the DVDs for the pace, because I like other people in the room tend to talk much too quickly. And so the DVDs forced me to slow down deliver it.
Explain what is on the DVD.
It's effectively a portrayal of the lecture, if you will. And some of it's just visualizations of symbols and things like that. But it's effectively, and Chad may have a better explanation, but it's effectively the old slides that.
So basically, the magic lantern. But on a DVD. Okay,
modernized.
It's not. Okay, I'm sorry. So like, we use PowerPoint. We've taken the magic lanterns slides and put them on PowerPoint. So you're the lecturer and you click and you advance. Yeah. You're saying you're playing a DVD, so you have to speak to keep pace with the DVD showing each one for a certain amount of time.
And I think what most people do, so when you attend a lodge and they're using the DVD, typically there is a second brother. There's the brother that is lecturing, and then there's the second brother that has the remote, who is constantly pausing and fast forwarding the DVD to try to keep it in pace with the lecture. And again, I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means, but what I found is that when I was learning the lectures, if I wasn't matched with the DVD, that was my clue that, hey, I'm not at the right pace, and it forced me to slow down.
I have a problem with that on many levels.
but to actually answer your question,
yes,
I don't use anymore. Now that I have gotten accustomed to them, I don't use the DVDs or the carpets. In any of our degree lectures, I have gotten to a point where our lodge actually has the physical objects of the symbols.
And very cool.
Even for the EA and the Master Mason, I have come to a point where I effectively do it like the fellowcraft, where we walk around the lodge and so forth. And
I like that idea.
And I have found that there seems to be a very good response from the candidate, because they're more engaged. They're not just sitting there listening. But I will be honest, the best compliment I ever got was I did the Master Mason lecture at one of our inspections, and I did it in that format. And one of the older past district deputies came up to me and said, "I just wanted you to know I didn't doze off once during your lecture."
Wow. That is a compliment.
So to me, that was the greatest compliment I could get.
Absolutely.
I want to offer one comment to that. I want to make sure that Steve
hold on, Chad. Terry and Steve had their hands up.
Terry and Steve, yep.
Let's address them first, please. Terry, you had your hand up. Terry. Okay, now David, Terry fell asleep during our conversation, so
I forgot to unmute. Hey,
go ahead, Terry.
we have a unique situation in Marietta where we have American Union #1, and they have a balcony in their temple, and they actually have the 3, 5, and 7 steps that lead up to the balcony, and that's the way that the lecture is presented.
I'm
literally walking up
somewhere on this
steps.
computer.
That's cool. And who's Steve? Steve had a comment, or if Steve wants to unmute.
Okay, had to unmute.
Yes.
Yeah, we have the same thing in the Canton Masonic Temple, only it's a spiral staircase back behind the candidates' rooms, and nobody sees it. So, but it does have 15 steps in it. I learned the lectures under the old slides, and the first thing they told us was, don't look at the slides because you'll get confused. And I found that was true for me. So I did present the lectures using the slides, but the candidate was seated in front of me. I'm standing facing the west, and the slides are in the east on a screen behind me. Now the DVD, as the other brother mentioned, is essentially the slides, but it's more modernized. They'll have a recent photograph of a top hat and those kinds of things to kind of show the symbols. But I also found that the DPT was seriously too slow. in many years later, I came to understand that I was presenting the lectures much too fast, mostly because I was memorizing them while commuting to work, and I had a limited time on that commute, only about 15 minutes. Our shortest lecture in Ohio was 18 minutes. And so I'm rushing along and presenting it in lodge that way. Today, several of our lodges in Columbus, Ohio use on the floor carpets. Some use slides. A couple have physical objects, at least for the Master Mason degree. But I have found, in my opinion, that it really comes, and I don't know that I'm as good as I would like to be or as I would like to see, but I have found that if you do the lecture right, which is relaxed, not sloppy, formal, not rigid, those kinds of comfortable, confident presentation, it really is down to how the member can express himself and tell the story that determines on what gets imparted to the candidate. I don't think the candidate necessarily I'm changing your question. I'm answering a different question, and I admit that.
No,
but I think the candidate's experience is not so much dependent on the what's the word, trinkets
Text.
or no, the objects that are there, the examples or whatever. I can never come up with the right word. The props. I don't think the candidate's receipt and understanding and how it gets installed into the candidate's mind and heart is dependent so much necessarily on the props as it is on the comfort and confidence of the presenter. And if that presenter knows his work, knows the definitions and how they're properly used, does his presentation correctly and with the correct pronunciation, even the candidate who doesn't know what the word superfluous means, for example, will get the understanding and also get the larger picture. Today, when I'm doing the lecture, and I haven't done one for quite a while, I just use whatever my lodge uses, and my lodge is very good and has decided to take a lot of time in putting together the evening. Nothing I have found impresses the candidate so much as coming into that room and seeing how obviously everybody has taken time to put together this whole room. Now, they don't see everything. They don't see stuff being brought out of cabinets onto the floor, brought out of closets, and put up on. They don't see all of that. But it does nevertheless make an impression between having a room at candlelight and having a room in fluorescent lights. So, great talk.
To your point, I mean, the thing that you and I talked about this, and people here have heard me say this numerous times. It comes to the idea of being intentional with Masonry. Like when I give the lecture, I really am trying to talk to the candidate, not at the candidate. And I know that sounds really silly, but that is a distinction to make sure that I am focused on my role there in that night is to bring that candidate into our family. These are the rules. These are the things you need to know. These are like, I'm talking to him. Yes, there's an important part of that for the guys on the sideline, but you're right that it's not necessarily the props or the lights or the, smoke machines, tuxedos, and camels. It has to do with creating the experience for the candidate, bringing him into the family, in my opinion. So,
Jonathan's been waiting a while. You still
sorry.
had your hand up, Jonathan, or were you?
I just wanted to share that when I was raised in Florida, where things are done a little different than here. But
where's here? Oh, Virginia. Yeah,
Virginia,
you're actually in Virginia. That's right.
Yeah. Member of 2 lodges here in Virginia. But when I went through my second degree, they actually had a canvas, and when they were doing the senior deacons lecture, they used the canvas, and I recall the person who, I can't remember his name, but I can remember almost everything he explained because he used the canvas and he said it so eloquently and slowly, and he did talk to me. So I guess everything that our brother, the presenter, just said is 100% true, because I can still remember that evening, and the canvas did help, and the way he presented it and the manner that he presented it made it very memorable. So
thank you. There was one thing I wanted to add. We were talking about the slides versus the DVD, whatever. I know people have said, if you're showing the slides, the danger is the candidate will look at the slide and not at the lecturer. So I made a point. I've given all 3 lectures over the years. If I'm giving the lecture and I've got the slide, I've got the candidate's attention. When I want him to look at the slide, he sees the slide. When I want him to come back and look at me, he looks at me. So it's like, see this, there's the beautiful virgin in the broken column. We talk about it. Now back to me. So I make sure, just directing the candidate, you're supposed to be looking at me now. You're supposed to be looking over here. You're supposed to look back at me. And a good lecturer, I think, can do that and not lose himself to the presentation behind his head. If he's not running it, there's a danger, Steve, if he's behind you, if it's behind you and you're not running it, the candidate's going to look at the screen and not at you. So I think it's just like the lecturer controls the direction of things and say, looks to the side, now back at me, instead of being behind me. But go ahead.
What's interesting is that, I referenced Dave Bacon, and some of you may know him and some of you may not. He's a tattoo artist, and he's done some presentations about, he's big into symbols in Masonry. And he used to actually take out the chalk and draw the symbols on the floor. And at the end of the night, he would erase the symbols on the floor, like make it an actual,
Oh, wow.
And he claims that that's the way that it was always done. And,
it was for a time.
And I'm sorry, but I got excited to hear that, because I'm reading this book here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's called The Mason's Word. And I actually just read where the Tyler actually was responsible for doing that. And every night he unfortunately had to undo all that work. And then yeah.
Well, and somewhere, and both Steve and Dave are past masters of the Ohio Lodge of Research, somewhere in the OLR, somewhere in there is supposedly a presentation by Dave about the symbols. I haven't found it yet, but it supposedly exists in there. And Dave has kind of stepped away from Masonry, but it's a very interesting presentation. But what's interesting to me is that that's how it started. And then all of a sudden we have a new technology, right? Lithographs, printing, it becomes available. And now we have the books, and we have the carpets. And then what do we have next? We have candles, and we have painted glass. I mean, it just seems like it's just a tool that kind of gets, evolves over time. The next tool probably is going to end up being, I don't know, holograms you project from your wrist, but I don't know that necessarily, does that really change? Does the medium really change the message?
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it does change the message. It can detract from the message, but I think you're exactly right. It's all about intent. And on that, well, there is something to the ritual also. I mean, I joined Masonry in Ohio, but I was raised as a courtesy candidate in the Granby Street Temple. And the past master was standing on the podium, and I was sitting in a chair, and that seemed a bit kind of strange. But as a result of that experience, I do have to let everybody know that the Master Mason degree under the Virginia ritual is actually the best one.
That's right. Hey, when was that, Steve? What year was that you received your?
1970, January of 78, I believe.
70.
You know that they're like Pennsylvania Masons who would fight you tooth and nail about that, right?
Oh, well. I will say this, talking about the tracing boards, which is what we're talking about. Back in May, I realized this long, it was May of 2021. I had a brother gave a talk in here on the art of Masonic tracing boards. And that was Brother Scott Watson who presented that. That is available on YouTube. So if you follow the link here to YouTube, if you're watching us online, if you're watching us on YouTube now, it's in the same playlist you're looking at. And please like and subscribe. Got to throw that in now and again. But we've already covered Masonic tracing boards, and that was very interesting because he showed us some from various different grand jurisdictions. And yes, there was a time when you would have you would literally trace it on the ground for the candidate, and as someone said, wash it away at the end of the meeting. So then we standardized it a bit where you could have someone make the tracing boards. You could buy them. Obviously, Mr. Sherer, brother Sherer, made them. One more thing, Chad, you mentioned you don't know that he was famous, and then he basically made himself well known. So I call it fake it till you make it. Like, tell everybody you're world renowned until let people buy your crap, and then all of a sudden you are world renowned.
Being somebody who is somewhat committed to Masonic education, I always tend to quote that famous line by Reagan, never let the truth stand in the way of a good story, especially when it comes to Masonic education. And it's entirely possible. I mean, that's, again, looking at that period of time in Masonry, especially in Ohio, especially in Cincinnati, where you had that murderer's row of engravers. I mean, everybody is putting out stuff. How do you set yourself apart? By saying that you have the one true ritual, or that you were the one,
absolutely,
endorsed by Kentucky and Georgia and Wisconsin and whomever, and who's going to check your claims,
right?
Other than some guy 100 years later, trying to find evidence that you even existed. So
interesting. Kurt, go ahead.
Did you say that some of John Scherer's work is still being produced and sold?
It's not. Well, it is actually. There are some companies, and I mentioned the first time I mentioned Dave Bacon. But he has a company that he made huge canvas prints of them, and he sells them. He has limited availability. He has some that are big on poster board. You do see lodges now that will take high quality scans of theirs, or of those carpets that I showed that have all 3 degrees, and they will print them off. Now that printing has kind of become, it's much cheaper than it used to be.
Yes.
There's a lodge. I'm going to ask Terry because he'll know. It's south of us, down by Morning Dawn. They took their big carpets and they reduced them down to these little 11 by 17, and they're up by the master's chair, and they still use them. So
Shade River.
Yes, it is Shade River. It's exactly what it is. And they still use them. They have no. And it's funny, I went down there to visit them. They had no idea what they were, why they had them. They just knew that they had those on their walls forever, and they were starting to get kind of crunchy. So they just took pictures of them, reduced them. And I said, well, where are the old ones? I said, oh, they're probably in the attic somewhere.
Yeah. People don't know what they have. Do we have more questions for Chad?
I just want to comment. It kind of reminded me of your search for John Sherer. Kind of reminded me of a genealogist I heard talk once about his search for his ancestors, and he said, they want you to find them. And it just sounded kind of like he was talking to you almost. He wants you to find them,
I hope so. And I'll be honest, part of me doing a presentation like this, I just changed my microphone. So you probably can't hear me.
I hear you now. You're good.
Right. George, the cat. Because every time I do this presentation, like when I did it for the OLR with the next day, Dave and Dave Cruz or Don Cruz, and these guys show up and say, hey, we have one of those, or we've got something from him, or we have this, and they send me pictures, and it ends up, enriching my own library. And so part of me does hope that talking to you guys in Virginia and Ghana and Wisconsin and all the people we have here, that I don't know, maybe someday I'll get that piece, that one thing that says, yep. And I don't know if I ever actually will be able to rest and say, yep, I know this guy. I got it. I understand it. Because every time I pull at one string, now my fixation is from yesterday, finding that I've been looking for the rationale behind that stupid little print for a year. And I really found it thoroughly by accident. But now it makes sense. But now, why is it not in any of those other books?
Right. It's interesting, Chad, to point out that most of the time when we have a presentation, most people who write a research paper, it's I've set out to answer this question. I answered it, and they explain it, and they tell a nice little story in 15, 20 minutes, and they have a conclusion. They set out to say, I'm going to tell you how this came about, and then they tell you with detail, and you say, okay, a nice conclusion. You're saying, I set out on this mission, you talk about how you're going out to find these answers, and you still got all these unanswered questions, and it's sort of an open-ended. It's not like you're giving us a nice, neat bow wrapped around the whole thing, say, here's Sherer's story. We're kind of left hanging there. What's the answer? Is there going to be a part 2, Chad? Come on.
This kind of isn't going to be my part 2. This is, I mean, there is a conclusion here. I mean, I could stop now. Many of you, as I have gone through this, you know, there's questions I posited, and you all like, well, of course, it makes sense, right? Why aren't those prints in the other books? Somebody cut them out. They fell out. Sherer being notoriously, you know, sloppy in how he described his books. Maybe we're not looking at the same book. I mean, there's all kinds of explanations that could satisfy people, which is fine. And there's all kinds of reasons why I can't find evidence that the dude actually existed, because that's just the time. I mean, but
right.
That's also not the point. I mean, the truth is really, all of us have these different fascinations that get us into Masonry. You know, these things that connect us, whether it's I'm in Athens, Ohio, and I can walk down the street in Athens, Ohio, and I can see the names of streets named after the guys who founded my lodge, and the mascot for the university that I work for is named after Rufus Putnam, who was the guy who brought Masonry from, you know, Massachusetts to Ohio through American Union #1 in Marietta. And there are these different, we all have these different connections that we find. And the thing is, once you find them, man, you start finding more, and you start seeing them, and they give that definition to Masonry for you, and they kind of define your and enrich your world. I mean, so yes, I can give this a nice, neat bow. I found kind of my path into Masonry. I'm not done yet. I don't think any of us are done yet.
I'm not saying you had to. I'm saying I kind of like the fact in this unstated meeting environment, you don't have to have a nice, neat bow and still give a good presentation. And we're all kind of like, oh, wow, maybe there'll be you'll do a follow-up at some point. Come back and tell the rest of the story. That would be cool.
If I ever find the rest of the story.
All right.
You know, I'm trying to.
That's your homework assignment.
Well, I'm trying to get. I haven't talked to Heather Calloway over at, in Indiana, and I'm trying to get her to. I'm trying to get her to come out to the Midwest Conference, it's in Canton in April, and I will show that from. David's kind of laughing at me under his breath that I am showing this thing yet again, but. I want her to see that. I want her to come and see that book. And I'm hoping to get other guys there like Chris Busby or, whoever I can find to get there and come and look at this thing, help fill in the gaps, because the answer has to be out there. And even if it's not, just finding answers to more questions, right? Why are MC Lilly and, Sherer's carpets so similar? Why are they using the same images? Where do they come? Yeah. So
Brian, you had a question? You had your hand up?
Yeah. Was William Sherer and John Sherer in any way related?
William Sherer was the gentleman. Was he the explorer in the UK?
No, he was Royal Arch in America.
Okay. I don't have that information. I don't know. It's entirely possible. I'd have to take a look, because there's a whole passel of Sherers that come to that part of Ohio.
Yeah.
That time, and I don't know, but it's entirely possible. Sherer did do a fair amount of work. He created carpets for the York-Rite degrees, but I just don't know.
Hey, do we have any more questions? Oh, David has a hand up.
Yeah, I just had a thought there. In Brian's question and Chad's response is, that's I think one of the big challenges to research in general, which is every answer opens up 2 or 3 more questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even more so in Masonic research, because quite frankly, most of our knowledge, if we want to use that word, is by hearsay. right? How many conversations have you had that started with, I heard this story, and it's oftentimes difficult to sort out what is fact and what is fiction. And so I think that's one of the big advantages to the conversations like this, is that you get to hear all of those other stories and pick up little pieces, and, you know, kind of the connection that we just had between John and William Sherer and so forth. But I think to Chad's point, one of the biggest challenges for me, at least, in doing this type of research is not only making those connections, but then the hard work comes out and figuring out where the fact is and where the fiction is. And unfortunately, the Masonic organization has not been very good about record keeping in that sense. And it becomes a much bigger challenge than if you are researching some other topics. So, but at the same time, that's what makes it fascinating as well.
Well, and Dave, I mean, even in our jurisdiction, asking, well, why do we do this in our ritual? You get 19 different answers from a lodge, and some of it's like a retronym. Some district deputy did that for 30 years in that district, and that's why they do that way. It's not the way they do it anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So
there was a sign. Now, Granby Street is a huge building. I mentioned it. So picture the ground floor. On the west side, there was an auditorium, huge auditorium, a raised stage, Scottish Rite on one end of it, Eastern Star on the other. Then a big hallway in the middle, doors at either side, huge cafeteria and a couple of smaller rooms on either side of that. Second floor, lodge rooms all along the east side. On the west side, the auditorium is 2 stories, commandery and Royal Arch on either end of the second floor. There was a wooden sign, very professionally made, that sat out in the middle of the first floor. Only Master Masons allowed on the second floor during meetings. And I met with the youth groups. We had Jobies who met on Sunday afternoons, but we didn't have anybody who met during the evenings. But something came up, and someone finally asked, hey, what's the deal behind this sign that says no one but Master Masons allowed upstairs when lodge meetings are going on? And we went to the temple committee. Every lodge is a member of the temple committee, which collectively runs the building. Everyone's an owner of the building. And the temple committee kind of runs it, pays the intendant to run the building, pays the bills and all that. The temple committee could not find any record of who approved putting that sign out there. But it had been out there for at least 10 years. And when enough people asked about it, apparently some brother took it on himself to make that sign and put it out there. And no one approved it. And they just took the sign away. Because no one said you could do this, but some brother did it, and everybody respected it because it's a very nice professionally made sign. I was like, good grief.
In my district, during the third degree, the temple gets searched.
Yep.
And in my district, we do it a really specific way, and the brethren go to certain areas and they say certain things and they do certain things at certain times. It's not in the ritual.
Right.
And in fact, if you go 10 miles away from a lodge in another district, they don't do it that way. But everyone in my district is like, that's the way we're supposed to do it. The ritual
We've always done it.
No, it doesn't.
That's right.
And it turns out that it was a guy named I think it was a guy named Roger Van Dyke. Basically, that's the way he wanted to see it done. And he just scared the bejesus out of everybody. So that's everybody in my district does
along
it
with him.
and will. So
Jonathan posted that your paper is like a national treasure, but real life. And yes, and unlike the movies, it actually has to do with Masonry. My biggest beef with what's the clown's name? Da Vinci Code. The guy who wrote Da Vinci Code. Dan Brown. Nothing to do with Masonry whatsoever. And nothing to do with any of the actual I read the first book, and nothing to do with any of those actual artists. It was someone else putting hidden meanings here and there. Nothing. It painted this big conspiracy of all of these famous Renaissance painters, and they all have these secret symbols in there. It's like, well, no, none of them did. So the whole premise of the book was like, yeah.
good.
I'm tired. I get tired of people who Masonry, secret conspiracy. I was like, but you read the actual fiction book, and Masonry has nothing to do with it whatsoever. I don't know. We're just a convenient backdrop. Anyway, I like to see a Mason do an actual book about real Masonic events or something as like a mystery story based on, something actually Masonic. I think that would be more plausible.
I actually wrote a game years ago for a lodge in Illinois that was something like that. We did it. I did it. It was like a escape room type of thing to do during a table lodge where.
Oh, cool.
We brought in certain codes, and the codes led to different questions, which led to different areas. And if you solved the puzzle during dinner, you got you got a treasure. So
cool.
But same kind of thing. Like we used real life events, real life symbols. It was kind of fun. So
nifty. All right. Do we have more questions for Brother Chad? Anybody?
I've just come across a book called The Masonic Ladder by John Sherer.
Masonic Ladder, another one of his books. I mentioned it a little bit in my presentation. About the same time. It's the same kind of format. What he did was he took the symbols of the degree, kind of married it with a little bit of the ritual from Preston Webb, a little bit of kind of the explanation and the history of those symbols, what they are, why they're there, at least from that perspective. But that was a later edition in which he actually incorporated more of what we would consider York Rite Masonry.
Right.
What is really interesting about it, from my perspective, is that it is that very early perspective at the beginning and development of what we consider our York Rite, and right smack dab in the middle of our quote unquote ritual wars in the mid 1800s in America. And a lot of those interpretations or connections may not necessarily hold up today, but it's interesting to go back there and look at, we might think it's more of a primary source. So, but it's also one of those books that truthfully, I think anybody and this is my bias, I think anybody who is research minded or historically minded, go and find a copy. You can get them Google Books, Library of Congress, Project Gutenberg doesn't, but they're available digitally.
Page does.
Pardon?
My Facebook page does.
No, yours does. You can email me. But it's just such a neat resource. And so they're great books to look at. So
I see Brother Jack Caffrey has joined us a little late, but good to have you with us, Jack. You missed the presentation, but we're good to have you with us. Hey there.
Thank you. I'm slow today.
It'll be on YouTube, so don't worry. It'll be out there on YouTube.
I'll go back and do that one.
All righty.
I'm glad you're taping it.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, once again, please like and subscribe. I do not have a presentation scheduled for December 17th. My speaker had to back out, and it's just as well because for those of us in Virginia anyway, this is the month of annuals. It's when we have all of our elections and installation of officers. So I'm going to be busy. I'll be an installing officer at 2 different lodges this month, which would be nice. And I'm starting to get popular. So people are calling to ask me and do installing officer at other lodges. And next week, if you are in Virginia or close enough, please come to visit us at Virginia Research Lodge in person in Highland Springs. Right Worshipful Matt Sermosky is our Grand Junior Warden. He was just promoted at Grand Lodge a week or 2 ago. Well, no, we're in December, 3 weeks ago. He is a fellow DMLA, and he was State Master Counselor, and he's on track to be Grand Master. There are not that many State Master Counselors who go on to be Grand Master, so it's kind of neat to know one in the growing. Matt, I've known him since the 80s. He will be speaking on the Silver Bullet and Masonry, talking about Masonic retention and keeping brothers active. So he'll be there in person. If you have a chance, come join us. Chad, you had a comment? Go ahead.
No, that's sort of.
Are you going to go down another rabbit hole? Yeah.
I jump up and down and yell and scream about.
Right.
I have a whole presentation that we did on the 5 guideposts for membership development.
Oh, okay.
We distilled all these different thoughts down to pretty much like 5 guideposts that if a lodge thinks about these things will, help with
That's
retention, recruitment, the whole nine yards.
It's a very, very common topic here. So anyway, that's on the 10th. My lodge, Ocean View, our installation is on the 9th, just to share that with everybody. And then I'll be also installing officer for Pocosin Lodge on the 17th. So I'm also going to another lodge that morning. So we will not be having a presentation on the 17th. The 10th, as I said, is our research lodge meeting, so we're not having it then. And we also have annuals going on, other annuals. And then, of course, the next week is Christmas, and the next week is New Year's. So I didn't feel appropriate to try and have one of these in around the holidays. So it'll be January 7th to be our next one. I don't have a firm topic title yet, but that is, and just double checking, yeah, the 7th. And that's going to be Eric Fierst from here in one of our lodges here in Chesapeake. So I will be announcing that on the Facebook page. So no presentations for about a month. Hope you all enjoy your annuals if it's that your season for you. Otherwise, everybody have a good Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, whatever other holidays you observe during this time. Anybody else? Anything to say before we close it out?
Yeah, Chris.
Please
Okay,
go ahead.
Okay, Jonathan.
Thank you. Anyone else?
What time is research lodge meeting?
10 o'clock. Just like, that's why we have our meetings at 10, because we meet for real at 10. And I'll be sending out in this week's email. I will have details on the in-person meeting. Prince, did you have more to say? I'm sorry.
Prince, sorry, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. I would like to have one-on-one conversation with you, right? So I have a lot of questions to ask you, if
okay,
you don't mind.
Well, yeah, we'll set up another time. I'm really going to be tired the rest of the day.
After the meeting.
Okay, we'll set up a time. Okay.
Just so before we go, I just find a little bit about Shearer's carpets, and the best place to hang them apparently is to the left of the treasurer.
Ah, is that in a book somewhere?
And to the right of the treasurer, yes, to a book I've just got hold of, and it's actually called John Sherer in this book as well.
Which book is this?
It's called hang on, The Worshipful Master.
That is a guide, yeah, the guidebook for the Worshipful Master. There's a second one out there for secretaries that also
as well.
Yep. Those are really fascinating books as well. You're going to go down a rabbit hole, Brian. Let me tell you right now. Call me or contact me, because that's your weekend is now set, just so you know.
I'm retired. I can do rabbit holes. Those books, by the way, will be on our Facebook page in the next hour or so, if anyone's interested. I'll even stick them on the Chris's site as well.
Absolutely. So you're going to show me up, because you promise stuff and you deliver right away. Of course, posting a link takes absolutely no effort. Believe me, it's about an hour or so worth of work to clean up a Zoom meeting and put it out there. I don't mind doing it, but I'll be upfront. It takes me at least an hour or more, and I try to edit out some of the nonsense and make it a little shorter for everybody. But I do make an effort to get our Zooms out there, within a week or so of the presentation, so they're out there on. I think the longest I had like 3 I had to do, and I was like 3 meetings behind, and I knocked them out all at once, like boom, 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 here you go. So I promise I do get them all out on YouTube at a reasonable amount of time, but I am a one-man shop here. But I do enjoy going back and rewatching them and kind of listening to the conversation in the beginning. And like, I pick a point where it's like, okay, now it's something that might be of actual use to somebody else, and we'll start here. I generally don't start from the beginning, because there's a lot of like introductory stuff like, hey, how's it going? All right, hook up your mic. Yeah, not everybody online wants to watch all that. So, but I appreciate all of you attending today. We had a high watermark of 13, I think. So tell your friends, tell your brothers, tell them to come out and watch these. I'd like to try and build the audience. We always seem to get a good 10 to 12 every time, and I consider that a win, but I really want to grow this. I think since COVID's over with and people are going back to lodge, people kind of dropped off. It's like, well, I can go back to lodge now. I don't have to go to this, but it's really neat that we have brothers from all over the world, literally all around the world, who tune in. Graham is sick, or he would be here. He's been here every week for like a month. He comes in from Australia, but we got brothers coming in from all over the world attending, and that's really cool that I can bring y'all together here. So thanks again, Chad. Great presentation. Looking forward. Help you and your brothers from Ohio come back again. And if Steve, David, Terry, Tom, if any of you are interested in giving a presentation, obviously we have set the bar low, so you are more than qualified. No, I'm just kidding. It was a great presentation. Seriously though, we encourage anyone who wants to give a presentation, please come and just get a hold of me and we'll sign you up. I want to give as many people a chance to, I want to have as many different speakers as possible and not just keep repeating, the same 5 or 6 guys. I like to get different people in here and get different perspectives. Anything Masonic related, you're more than welcome. And if you are new to giving papers and you haven't given one in your lodge, I think an online meeting is a much more comfortable way to get used to giving a paper than before your lodge. So if you want to try something out here, we should have like an open mic night. Just anybody show up, give a talk. That would be fun. We'll just get up there for 5 minutes and talk. I don't know.
Brethren, I'm actually going to sign off. I have to get my daughter up to, she's a Rainbow Girl and they have a parade today. So I have to go
outstanding
up to go hang out in a parade. So,
all right. You enjoy that.
Thank you. It was an honor. Please,
Bye.
contact me. And if I can be of any help, I'm glad to do so. So thank you, brother.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Everybody take care. See you all later.